Justin ties his Eucharistic theology to the incarnation of Jesus, A, and B, that he points to the words of institution as the moment of consecration, if that's what Justin means, and it seems
Right.
like that's what he does mean. Then what Justin does is he sows the seeds for what will develop in the Western
Absolutely.
tradition
Yes.
a as a doctrine of consecration that is derived from the incarnation and the words of institution. And the words of institution as the moment of consecration is really more of a Western thing than an Eastern thing, because in the Eastern Eucharistic rites, the Eastern Church will point to the invocation, the epiclesis, as what effects the consecration of the bread. The epiclesis is simply calling upon the name of the Lord and the invocation. In other words, it's the Eucharistic prayer in general, and it's not to a specific phrase that is stated, the words of institution that affect the consecration.
Oh,
So
it's
how do we avoid falling into that kind of trap to bring it contemporary up to our contemporaries? Do we do what the Westminster Divines did, which is to say that the spiritual reality is not so tied to the timing of the words, or it doesn't become mechanical, or there's guideposts, as it were?
Yes. So that's a very good question, and one of the reasons why this has become a debate in modern liturgical scholarship is we do have some rites, Eucharistic rites from the ancient church that don't even include the words of institution.
Mm.
They're not even mentioned. One is in the Didache. Now, they're not recorded in the Didache. That doesn't necessarily prove they weren't used in the Eucharistic observance. But we also have other Eucharistic rites from the ancient church that are later than the Didache, that in the anaphora, and that's the prayer that is said prior to communion, the Eucharistic prayer, the words of institution are not even included. So, can you celebrate the Lord's Supper without reciting the words of institution? And that has become a debate in modern liturgical scholarship, and it has it's a pretty heated debate because the Western Church ties the consecration of the elements to those words of institution. Now, how did the Reformers take the words of institution? The Reformers used the words of institution not in their Eucharistic prayers. They didn't have them contained in the Eucharistic prayers, but they would read the so called words of institution prior to the Eucharistic prayer to establish the biblical warrant for what they were about to do. So the Reformers argued that lawful worship is instituted by God alone. They rejected man-made ceremonies, and you have to have biblical warrant to sanction your liturgical customs and practices. And so they would read the words of institution to show the congregation there is biblical warrant for this. Christ himself established this sacrament. So we're observing it as appointed by Christ to be observed until the end of the age, until he returns. And so they didn't use the words of institution. I would put it this way: the Reformers did not use the words of institution in a consecratory fashion. They didn't see the words of institution as what effected the consecration of the bread and the wine, but rather they looked at the Eucharistic prayer in general as what effected consecration. So in that sense, it's a little closer to the Eastern tradition,
it
I would say, than the Western tradition.
makes total sense.